I'm the chief of the Intake and Regulatory Coordination Division, and this is the DRC meeting for MHP Amherst. Your lead reviewer is Troy Leftwich, and this meeting is being recorded and live streamed. The purpose of this meeting is for the applicant to ask any questions you might have based on the comments you received. I will ask Troy to kind of highlight any major issues that he has with this one and then turn it over to the applicant. So go ahead, Troy.
Trying to hit the mute button off. Thanks for everybody being here this morning. This is as Christina said, that this is the MHP Amherst sketch plan, also tied with the mandatory referral. I think overall, the project 320 multifamily units, tied between two buildings, 39 of the townhouses included within that. One of the major other pieces is the Art and Culture Center for the Wheaton area. The deposition, not the deposition, the disposition for the and site selection is being tied to the mandatory referral, and that's roughly 40,000 square feet, and then 15,000 square feet of office space tied within the proposal. I think one of the major questions I had was really tied to the phasing of the project, since there is a component of here in regards of just parks and land swapping that's occurring. And I know, just wanted to make sure the scope of the project is correct. I think I put in my comments that if the NRI needs to include the park site, just knowing how parks usually handles the transferring of land. And so just wanted to make sure that there's no demolition or improvements or site construction happening as part of that project. Or if it is, just need to understand the scoping of that, just to make sure that we're kind of keeping the scope of this NRI tied to this sketch plan, or if it's running a separate process. And I think there's going to be a lot of just questions in regards of the existing tenants of the Amherst site and the existing garden style apartments, and just how that's happening. I know there's conversations, but as this goes through the sketch plan, it'd be good to have that story or that phasing kind of outlined as what's intended at this stage. And if things move down the road, we can make those adjustments. But I think there's going to be a lot of questions in regards to that. And also at sketch plan, we set up the phasing. I think right now y'all had everything set up, or the comment in the plans right now is just basically talking about one phase, and we know there's a little bit more components to that. So just that was my overall big question. Outside of that, I think some of the stuff was just missing components that's tied to the sketch plan. And I know we had other folks with comments as well tied to the sketch plan, but I'll let Pat kind of just highlight those that are important from your end that we need to kind of pinpoint now.
Thank you, Troy. Good morning, everyone. Let me first say, we appreciate the time that staff has spent on this project to date. We've come a long way from when we first sat down with you, and I think it shows in the plan. So we're excited to keep this moving. In terms of the phasing, we will do a better job when we resubmit of explaining in the SOJ the phasing. I will say that the park is separate and apart in terms of the actual development, so that will likely be developed after this project is completed. So the NRI should only be tied to this parcel, but we will explain in the SOJ how the transfer of the residents from the existing park site over will occur, because that was sort of a related question with that. I was going to go down, and we have a number of comments and a handful of questions. So there was a comment about parking and whether we could further reduce it. Excuse me. Because this is also the Cultural Arts Center, it is difficult for us to further reduce the parking. And in fact, during our civic meeting, it seemed to be a real concern of some of the participants. And so we're carefully calibrating the number, but I think the number that we have is where we need to be in order to make sure that both the residential and the cultural arts components function well. There was a request for a number of sections, and while we certainly can provide them, the one question we have is, are those really needed at this point for sketch plan, or can we hold off and do those at preliminary plan? I know there was also comments about dedication, whether we would need to dedicate additional land area, we're confident that we can accommodate the required sections within the existing required right of ways. So I guess that I think the request for sections that may have been from Natasha.
Yes, Pat. So like we usually do that at preliminary plan, but we put them on notice when we write our DOT letter.
I see. Yeah, like most likely, like those sections that we ask for, we just want to make sure that we have enough frontage in front of those townhomes and apartment for landscaping and for the townhomes, like a stoops and like a stairs and stuff like that. So, and then also for those true block connections that you have at the southern edge, as well as that fire lane that you have between the townhomes. So we just want to know like how the applicant is trying to treat that frontage along those two sections. So that's why like we ask for sections to better understand like what is the relationship between the building and the edge of the pavers and the pedestrians versus like vehicular traffic. So it would be great if the applicant can provide those so we can further like discuss the width of each, and also like we were really concerned about that block through connection on the southern portion, and how lively that like it's a really narrow area and it looks like there's already a path that Ava produced and you guys are putting another path parallel to it, so it's just kind of like double, and then there's a fence in between, so it's not going to be a very attractive and inviting environment. So we just want to make sure it's one single path and everybody can use it, and it has a lot of seating, lighting, landscaping element incorporated into it.
How do you suggest that so our concern both on that comment and the comment regarding the connections to the north is that both of those items make us dependent upon property owners over whom we have no control. So for the Ava, they would have to agree to take down their fence, which is on their property, and allow for certain disturbance on their property. I just really don't see that happening. So we just want to make sure that as we move forward, we are not unnecessarily going to be our future is not tied to the consent of the property owners to the south and to the north, and I'll comment a little bit more on the north in a moment. But that so I want everyone to be, while we understand your objective, I don't know that it's achievable if we don't have cooperation from another property owner.
Yeah, so have you guys started talking to those folks from the north and south to see if they are like, now it makes sense for Ava to have a fence because there's nothing at that side and they want to prevent people like coming to their side. But if it's a nice landscaping area, I'm sure they won't mind like enhancing it and taking the fence out and like created like very cohesive real block through, like the way that it is now, like people are scared of using it.
We have not talked to the Avalon Bay, and so we will. They're the owners of the Ava, so we will approach them. On the north, there were two comments about providing connections on the north.
Correct.
And during our civic meeting, it was fairly clear from the neighbors at the Leesboro that they have no interest in providing those connections. So while we potentially could provide the connections to the property line, again, obviously what happens on their property is up to them. And I would also say that for us to even construct the actual connections, we're going to need construction easements from them. So we're very, very dependent upon them saying yes. So while we will do what we can on our property, if they provide those easements, we need to make sure that we're not absolutely tied to that, because they could just then, hijack the project, really.
I see. Yeah, understood. So as far as like what you are providing on your property, like the way that it is now between the northern and your north side of the street, like there is a stormwater management, so you cannot provide that access. So if the sidewalk is lined up in the way that it could in future, I'm sure, like if you do your part, I'm sure in future they will go ahead and tidy it because there is a dead end sidewalk along their townhomes that is kind of like dead end to the last townhomes that is along that.
No, I know, but I think you're, well, we'll see. I mean, I had the impression that while some people, and especially all of us, understand the importance of connectivity, they were more concerned about not having connectivity. So again, we will do what we can, but whatever condition ultimately comes out of that, we want to make sure that, it's worded in a way that we are not going to be held hostage by them if they don't give us the necessary construction easement.
Yeah, that's understood.
Mhm.
Understandable.
Okay.
Perhaps there should be some sort of a verbiage that they can't use your theater unless they get the connection.
That would work. Okay, so then in terms of public use space, there were comments about eliminating certain areas, including the areas that have some stormwater management in them. But in this zone, with the type of open space that we need to provide, the stormwater management actually, that's an acceptable use within, and we can count it. So we weren't clear on that comment. And then there was also a comment about not including the pedestrian connection on the south. And I would say, especially if we are able to enhance that as requested, that we certainly should be able to include the public use space on the south.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pat, are those like my comments?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, so Pat, I think Paul can also weigh on that one. I think you are talking about that sidewalk along the southern edge of building 2. Am I right on your last comment?
Well, yes, but not, I was actually talking about the entire connection from Georgia to Elkins, because you had provided an exhibit that had a red squiggly line saying none of this should be.
That was you, Troy?
Yeah, that was my comment. And it's twofold. You have the townhouse pieces of it, y'all broke it up properly in regards of the common open space and the public open space. What I was trying to kind of get to was getting you to that usable public open space. And so there was elements of this that I felt that were like slivers, and this connection, it wasn't clear what was happening with this connection. I think there was comments back and forth if the pathway could just be, if the fence was eliminated, maybe you didn't need a sidewalk on your side, or it'd be a combination of making these two spaces relate to each other. So in regards of how your public open space was being laid, since this area was kind of in flux of how it was going to be designed, I was looking to kind of get you in an area that we knew it wouldn't change as we get through the process. The stormwater management comment, I think, is consistent with public open space, but areas of common open space, which you're showing in these back areas, I think is fine. Anything where the townhouses are, you can meet that the requirement of the stormwater management facilities. The areas of the green, I guess, what you're showing the public open space, which is more so tied to the zone or the multifamily. Those are the areas where we would be looking for like more activation and program as we get further down to the line. So it's really just trying to lock you into an area that we knew wouldn't necessarily would change over the course of we get through the other phases, and not knowing how that space was designed. That can always come back online if you can't get that adjoining connection or relationship with the lower property and work with that side path. It can always come back as more so just looking for solid spaces, because we really don't look for those like slivers or connections unless it's like connected to like larger uses or spaces. So I really just saw that your public open space was, I guess, the center area of the site. And then
Pat, this is Paul. The couple of the comments, I think all these comments start to bleed together, because we're talking about the character of these streets. We're talking about the character of these public pathways, and now we're talking about stormwater, and I think we've asked for sections, and I mean there's a lot of how this all comes together. One of the problems that and that we see in the plan. And of course, again, we're only looking at it in plan, so I have no idea what this looks three-dimensionally or sectionally across the new street or the pedestrian pathway fire access. But what we see are these darker gray areas is all, I'm assuming, stormwater facilities. Right adjacent to the apartment building, in between the apartment building and the pedestrian path. There's there. We see them against the sidewalk along the street, right above there, all of those. And then we see them below the multi-family building at the bottom there. All of those are in locations where we want to see trees. I mean, we want to see street trees. We want to see amenities that relate to the pedestrians. And most likely, where you have these types of facilities, you're not going to be able to do anything except either put the cistern or put the stormwater facility. So one of the things we were looking at, for instance, if you look at the fire access pathway, you got the two triangles kind of right in between the townhouses, that are tan right now. Could some of that stormwater go over there so that you could have kind of a streetscape associated with that path going through the middle? On the very upper point, the northern point here, next to those four townhouses, there's another triangle there. Could some of that stormwater go into there so that you free up essentially the planting strip between the street and the sidewalk again, so that you could have trees and you could have a little bit more streetscape in that location? So that's kind of, and then, I think you've already covered this pathway. I mean, this pathway on the south is just, it's kind of silly to be redundant like it is. And I'm sure you guys probably think the same. And we understand that, that's going to take some cooperation between the two sides. But one of the other things I just wanted to suggest is, that pathway, if that pathway combined between you and Ava could come all the way down to Elkin, rather than counting on crossing the service drive to get to the other side, I think it would just be much better. And so if perhaps some of the green that you have next to the building there could come over to the other side, and maybe that driveway gets adjusted just slightly so it's a little bit more expansive on that southern side, then you could have a better pedestrian kind of environment. Again, coupled pedestrian environment, but a better one there, rather than just trying to sort of weave back and forth across the service drive.
So couple comments about that. And we do want to set up one more design meeting, I think, before we resubmit. The grades from Elkins immediately adjacent to Elkins are very steep, which is why the Ava, as you can see, they had their connection and then they went south. They don't go all the way out to Elkins because of the grade. So it would be very difficult to do, and Dylan can chime in, probably impossible. I mean, not impossible, nothing's impossible, but very difficult to accomplish. I would also note that, this project, we're providing that northern connection, and the northern which wasn't master plan. So we're providing an additional pedestrian access way along the north that also has the additional sort of spur path in between the townhouses and building 2. So if in fact the southern one if we're not able to combine it, it's not as if there isn't that east-west pedestrian passageway. It's just, a couple hundred feet further to the north. So the block is permeable. But we will, I think when we sit down, we can talk about that southern pathway further. And maybe what we'll try to do is get a hold of the Avalon Bay folks before we then meet back with you.
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, this is a very difficult problem, this pathway, I think, we're all, the master plan, you, probably Ava, are all trying to create something that's nice there with almost no land. And so it's very, very difficult.
Quite honestly, as it exists now, it's far less from ideal. So to some extent, you guys are looking for us to fix something that, isn't currently inferior, I would say.
Right. Yep.
So while we have the plan up, we can comment on a couple other things. There was a comment about building 2 and providing walkout apartments along the first level. The first level of building 2, as currently planned, actually would be office space. And so 2 things related to that. One is in the elbow of the project, we would be planning some type of patio to try to activate the first floor areas. And then along Elkins, again, we have an elevation issue, a topography issue, but we would be providing some type of more formalized entrance there. So we understand your objectives, but the program isn't residential on that first floor. It's office.
Yeah, Pat. So we appreciate if we have some sort of like narrative or floor plan that shows what's happening on the ground floor of these buildings, especially for Georgia Avenue. Like we don't know where exactly the lobby for the theater is going to be, or like especially for building 2, like are those. So I'm glad that you're explaining those are offices. So even if it's office, we want to make sure that that pedestrian walk between the townhomes and building it's activated. So we need to have some sort of like an active ground floor. Even if it's office, we want to make sure it's like transparent. Where is the lobby? It looks like the lobby are providing on Elkins. So some sort of like an entry plaza right at that intersection. I think those are all like details that we need to have more like details for it.
Got it. Okay. There was a comment about in the southwest corner wanting some on Georgia, wanting some kind of iconic gateway. And Natasha, I think that was you again. Can you explain what you're looking for there?
Yeah, so if we go back to the massing, Troy, please. So like we thought that like if we are emphasizing on that east-west pedestrian through connection, like we need to have a marquee to show that gateway. Like your massing is very simple at this point. I understand like the architecture is not hashed out yet, but we thought that some sort of like the massing move that shows like emphasize on that through block connections, that would be like ideal to be on the southern edge of the building instead of being in the middle. Like it looks like you are putting the marquee in the middle, which it's not a lobby. It's like we just didn't understand why the applicant is trying to put that massing move in the middle of the building, which is just going to the fire room. Like there's no lobby to the residential. There's no lobby to the art facility there. So we thought if that moved to the one of the corner, it would be like a better massing move. So that was just a suggestion.
Again, we're trying to do as many things as possible to activate that passage.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just one more element. I mean, if it's inviting, right now it sort of looks like it's just a dark corner. And so if there's something that helps to kind of invite people that way, I think it's helpful. And it's just, again, it's sort of comprehensively we're trying to figure out and trying to work with you to figure out a way to make that pathway something special.
Got it. Okay. Got it. We'll give that some additional thought. I think our architects are on the line, so they're hearing the comment. There was a comment about providing BLTs, per the incentive guidelines, because we are providing more than 20% MPDUs, there is no requirement to provide any other public incentive components, though we certainly are, but BLTs are not required.
To follow back up on that, Pat, because I thought all CR projects had to do BLTs regardless of the NPDU requirement.
No, but we can. That has not been my experience on other affordable housing projects. But we can talk about that. Then the WSSC had a comment about replacing a 6-inch sewer line in Elkins. We are actually already proposing replacement of some lines in Elkins. So I think if they can take another look at that comment in relation to what we're proposing, I think we may already be addressing that. And then two other comments. One is the building, there was a comment about could we wrap building two around the parking structure on the north? Obviously, that would eliminate a significant portion of the parking garage, and that's simply not feasible. We do, however, understand the design issue and will be paying attention to the architecture, the facade of the garage in order to address the design. There's also loading, there's access and loading there that we need to preserve. So providing a liner building wouldn't work from that component, from that standpoint either.
So in that case, Pat, we are looking for more like architectural screening or mural.
Right.
Anything helps. Like we appreciate that you are pushing the garage a little bit setback compared to building 2 and building 1.
Mhm.
But again, like we need some sort of like architectural element to make sure that the garage is fully screened.
Right.
The public realm.
And at this stage, because we are just sketch plan, I'm assuming we can just say architectural elements / mural
Yes, correct.
and leave
Yeah.
it for,
For the
future.
site plan, yeah.
Yep.
Like, we just want to point it out to flag it for the site plan.
Okay. And then finally, our favorite topic, which is undergrounding. The undergrounding, I understand where where parking planning is coming from, but it's an affordable, first of all, it's not required by the master plan. It is an affordable project. And in terms of priorities, the priority is providing more than 300 affordable units here. And it's simply not feasible in this case to underground the utilities along Elkins. That's a cost that this project, as an affordable project, just simply can't bear. So with that, I think I covered the main things, what we would like to do. I think it would be helpful. One, as I said, we will try to reach out to Avalon Bay before we have one more design meeting just to address some of the things. Paul, I think you shaped it well, sort of what the big picture objectives are. So we would like to have another meeting with the design folks, and then I think a meeting with the county DOT and transportation planning would also be helpful. I don't know if that needs to be it's probably better to have 2 separate meetings.
Pat, I can set up a work session meeting for next week if you want to do that, to try to keep you guys on track. And if that's the case, everybody would be in the same meeting.
I think that'd be great, actually, because you just went to my very second thing, which is we are hoping that we get a sketch plan hearing in the November timeframe. The thing that's driving our schedule is the tax credit schedule. And so in order to stay on track with that, and when we need to make application to the state and give them some assurances of what kind of project we actually have here, we're looking to get to this planning board in November if possible.
Okay, so you need design, DOT, and you said somebody else.
Transportation planning. So
Yep.
Pat, have you guys looked at all? I know we keep on saying this, and we all know that it's a big element of the future of this area, but have you thought about how you're going to connect to the park?
Well, there were a couple comments about just providing connections from our northern street out. And there was no details on that. I'm assuming what that meant was simply mid-block crossings on Elkins.
Well, whatever you're going to propose, I think you guys should be the driver. If you want a certain crossing, or you want a certain connection to that future park, or you want to even dictate maybe some of the things that might happen in that park, I think you guys, with this project, and hopefully with this project in the ground before that park is ever done, it would be good to be, proactive and suggest where that might happen that would be, in the best interest of your project. And so I would suggest that you at least suggest that. And I know that in our internal discussions with all the agencies, there were some discussions on where some of the crossings could or couldn't go. And at this point, we were assuming that you guys might be suggesting a crossing at each of the curb cuts. That's three crossing. I don't know, but we're not seeing anything, and perhaps you might want to suggest where you do want to cross. I know that again, that pathway to the south was supposed to be a connection from Georgia to the park, so that's one. But after that, I think it'd be good to be kind of a little more proactive, I think, on your part if you want to be.
Well, I would say two things. One is I'm not so sure, and DOT can chime up, whether they really want 3 mid-block crossings in that small stretch.
I think they don't.
Right. And frankly, 3 seems a little, since, 1 mid-block crossing is often questionable. I can see that 3 may be over the top. So I think we need to hear from DOT whether 2 would be acceptable, and then we can determine where most appropriately they should be. My feeling is once we show where those connections are, then it's up to the park designers to design based on that. We don't want to get involved in park design.
That's what I'm suggesting. That's what I'm
Okay.
suggesting. They're going to be looking at what's on the ground. And that's why you, at this point, because you're first in line, you have a say. And so I would suggest you say it then. And I mean, this is going to be a very large park across the street from you guys, a very large urban park. And so, you should be taking hopefully very full advantage of that in any way you can. So.
Understood.
Okay, we need to wrap up because we have to start the next
Just say
item.
one thing?
Yes.
We are looking for more than just a crossing. We will be looking for some kind of traffic calming, and I think that they are doing some speed study on there.
Yeah, I mean, the TIS, that's probably something, Pat, we need to talk about. I think I made the comment, the information, there was no trip generation information, but also the scope on the previously scoped TIS didn't match up with the units being proposed now. So, but yeah, speed study would be part of the TIS.
Yeah. So we're looking for more than just a crossing.
Well, Rebecca, can you, and maybe because we're running out of time before we meet next week, can you shoot me an email on what that means? Or if
It's basically chicanes or bump outs or something along those lines.
Okay. And what was the first thing that you said?
Chicanes.
What are those?
The diverters where they kind of make you go a little bit one way to
okay, got it. Okay, and then Christina, so if you were to schedule this meeting, is it next Tuesday? Is that the way this works now?
Yes, it would be next Tuesday.
Okay, well, hopefully that works in terms of timing. Do you have a time?
What's the time?
No, my assistant Emily will be reaching out to you today.
Okay. Anything else real quick from our team? Knowing that our time's pretty much up. Okay,
All right.
well, we appreciate this and we look forward to meeting next week.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, bye.
I'm the chief of the Intake and Regulatory Coordination Division, and this is the DRC meeting for Radwick Lane property. Your lead reviewer is Parker Smith. Thanks for bringing up the plan, Parker. The purpose of this meeting is for you to ask any questions you might have based upon the comments you received. The meeting is being live streamed and recorded, and I'll ask Parker to highlight any of the major issues first, and then turn it over to you. So go ahead, Parker.
Right, yeah, so I think you guys have received our comments by now. It's a lot of comments, I think. I think the main issues we're having are with access. I think these 3 driveways all sort of stacked in a row aren't quite gonna work, so we might need some consolidation of those. We also have 2 lots without frontage, which, you know, have to meet special standards and have to be accessed in a certain way to make them, you know, viable. And then the other issue I'd point out is environmental. I think Amy Lindsay provided comments about, you know, this is a very heavily forested site, so I think we would want portions of the area in Category 1 easements, which is going to sort of eat away at your lot sizes, assuming that, you know, you're not going to go all the way up to the backs of the houses. So that's the overview, and we can get started with any questions you guys want to dig into.
Okay, all right. First, I'm Karen Carpenter with Kim Engineering. We have Brandon Fritz and Caleb Mosbrook, and then the owner, Marcello and
Jason Poe.
right. So I guess the first thing I wanted to talk about is the comment says per section 59 6.14D, a maximum of 2 driveways and 300 feet of frontage. And when I look at that code, it does not apply to R200. It applies to the R20, 10, 30, and then all of the CRT zones.
Sure was that, yeah.
If you look at the very first section of the code, it tells you which zones it applies to. Because it didn't really make any sense to me, because how could you have R200 lots that are 100 foot wide and you limit only 1 driveway for every 300 feet? How's that work?
Yeah, so that's more for commercial development, not residential, single family houses. But I
So-
think we still have a problem with the location of the driveways.
Okay, and so then I guess there were some other comments about the driveways. We followed the requirements to have the driveways be along the frontage and not to have the aprons go past the property line extended. Also, when we did this project the last time, we did a site distance, so those meet site distance. So we wanted to find out what the issue is.
They were located within the intersection or too close to the intersection. That's the issue.
Well, the stream buffer comes right up. There's not much room to move them.
Right.
So if you don't put them there, there's really no other place to put them. I mean, the one that's on the north could shift maybe 10, 15 feet, but that's it. Because the rest of the frontage is stream buffer. And I think the topo.
Can we combine the driveways?
We can look at that, because I know Marie had some comments about fire access, which we will work with her separately to address those, and I think we can address that. So
Do we look for 1 driveway?
1 total?
Yeah, I mean, you
Because one of the things, if you know, from the last time, we had a public street, which started out being private, but then ended up being public, and we had to follow all of the site distance criteria for vertical curves, and that led to a lot of cut. And I think it was over $1 million worth of earthwork, which made this project not feasible. And so I think combining the driveways, we have a lot of grade to work with.
you need to show us at this point that it can't work with 1 driveway.
And I mean.
And it's only 4, maximum of 4 houses on a driveway.
Right, I understand that. And so by can't work, the fact that it's over $1 million worth of earthwork, does that make?
We need to see why, we need to see the drawings of why it doesn't work.
Okay. All right, and then I think that the next comment was that we have 2 lots that don't have frontage on a private street, so we were planning to show that because of the environmental conditions and because of the unusual topography that we could justify a waiver. And on the plan, we've labeled the setbacks, so there's 80 feet between the houses, so I don't think that's an issue at all.
Yeah, I think the setbacks are fine. I think, yeah, you're gonna need to justify it and make sure that the access meets all those requirements of non-confronting lots, or, yeah, non-frontage lots.
Okay, and then there's that says, consider providing a driveway connection between the eastern lots and the western driveway. And again, that one house that we show going out to Wintergate, that's an existing house, which they're gonna build a new house, but topography really limits being able to connect those two driveways.
Yeah, I think similar to what Rebecca was saying, just something.
So it
sort of-
doesn't work?
Yeah,
Okay.
showing the details.
And then there was a
Just
comment.
if that's the connection, if the connection is to Wintergreen, we need to show that where that connection is
Okay,
occurring.
right.
And also it would have to be, up to fire code standards.
And we can show that, and then we'll work with Marie on that. We do have a plan. There's no other lots on there legally. There's some people that have connected, but not legally, because those people have frontage and they have a driveway on 28. So this is really the only lot on that driveway. And he has an agreement and an easement. There was another comment that said to provide a pedestrian connection between Radwick and Wintergate. That was a comment from the last time around, Parker, if you remember. And we tried to go through the townhouses and they denied it. And then we also tried to follow the driveway and none of the people on that driveway would agree to it. So I don't think we can do that. And then you talked about having the category 1 easements on the lots and you say that they're too small. I looked through the forest conservation and I didn't see anywhere where it said there was a lot size. And I also went back and looked at plans that have previously been approved. And I've seen easements on lots that are smaller than these. So I wanted to know what lot size.
Well,
Sure.
Amy can speak.
Yeah, I can speak to this. So it is our experiences on those previously approved plans that the planning board has developed kind of a policy of not doing on-lot easements on lots that are smaller than like 2 acres, because what we find is that the property owner, and ends up encroaching. They end up with very small yards, and it's an enforcement nightmare.
When I looked, there was one that was just approved in the R90 zone, I think in July of this year. And I think there's some others. And my question is, what's a usable yard? Because behind these houses, we held a minimum of 30 and up to 40 feet times the length of the house, which is around 60. So I need to know what the definition of usable yard is, because to me, that sounds like enough space for somebody to have a rear yard that they can use, put in a pool, put in a patio, whatever. And I didn't see anything in the code.
It's a policy, like Amy said, it's not in the code, it's a policy. And it's because we've had a lot of enforcement issues with anybody that has easements directly in their backyard. What you see as a usable yard might be different than what the homeowners see as usable yard. Also, what's usually spec'd out on these plans, the sizing of the homes changes drastically when it comes in to be built. So those are the 2 reasons why there's this policy, because we have found over and over again that.
So it's a policy and not a code.
Yes, but it's a planning board policy that's been in place for a number of years.
Okay, but like I said, there are plans that just recently got approved this year with conservation easements on them that are half the size of these lots.
Karen, if you can cite me which plan that is, I would be happy to look into this for you, because
Sure.
There might have been some other circumstances. Like, for example, there was one approved that there was an existing forest conservation easement, and we allow development that maintained that existing easement. I'd be very surprised if we put a new easement on a small R90 property, but I'd be happy to look into that for you if you can provide me with the citation.
Okay, I'll find that for you. I guess the last one is from Natasha. And you talked about maybe combining all the driveways and making a private street, and it can't be a private street. It has to just really be a driveway, because the last time when it was a private street, we had to follow public road standards. And that's what led to all the grading problems.
I see. No, one suggestion that we had, because you are trying to like also connect your last lot, I think is lot 6, to the existing driveway. So we thought, what if you just extended Radwick all the way to the west and create like one driveway that all the houses can front into it?
But we can only have 4 lots on a private drive. And then you said we can only have one driveway.
So can that be a street? So you're saying it cannot be a street?
No, it cannot be a public street, and it cannot be a private street because of the grading requirements, the maximum grades for site distance. And that makes us have to cut.
Because in the last round, like you were saying that the grading, you have issues with the grading because of that oval green shape that the plan was showing.
Right.
So if it's just a straight, it wouldn't be.
No, because what happens is you have to have a 2% landing grade, and then you go up at 8%. And then you have to have another landing grade, and you end up cutting probably 10 or 15 feet off the top of that hill. And that's why we went in with private driveways here, because we don't have that constraint, so we can go up steeper. But on a private or a public street, we cannot do that and still make this work so that they can afford to build it.
A driveway with that steep, I'm sure like you have issue with the fire access.
I think we can work that out, because she needs to have the turnarounds, and I think we can work that out. Do you guys have any more comments? Marcello, Jason? Okay, and I guess one more thing, it said to line the driveway up with the existing driveway across the street, but that house across the street doesn't have a driveway. That man just kind of drives on it's an older house, and he just drives on his grass. So what did you want us to line it up with? Guys now?
Do you know whose comment was that?
Let's see.
Is it DOT? Did somebody make
I
it?
think it's in DOTs. Yes, it is. It's number 4. Proposed driveway should align with the existing driveway across the street. So, and I double checked in there that he doesn't really have a he doesn't have a driveway. Right now his cars, if you go on Google Earth, his car's parked on the grass in front of his house.
Is it maybe meant to just be aligned with this sort of zag of Radwick Lane?
So maybe like where that middle driveway is?
Yeah. Sort of just shift that to be aligned.
Yeah, this is Brenda. That was my intent.
Okay, and would you consider that one last lot, which I think lot 1? The bottom.
Bottom line?
Yeah, would you consider keeping that driveway, because that guy in particular, to connect him to the other driveways, there's going to be a topo issue.
Isn't there a better way to connect them outside, away from the intersection? I mean, they're really close to the intersection. And there's a lot of conflicting movements. So is there another location for the driveway? Like, can you pull the driveway closer to, away from the intersection?
Which way, north?
Well, north would be up, so south. So
The stream buffer is probably like 50 feet away. So that's
you need to provide an exhibit that shows the issues
Okay,
clearly, because this does not.
okay.
I think the issue is there's an existing driveway already going into that intersection, and having 2 or 3 more is an issue.
Where's the existing driveway going in?
There's an existing driveway to that house just to the east, southeast.
Oh, that house was just recently rebuilt and their driveway is over here now. So we'll show that on the plan.
Driveways should be shown on the plan. That helps us. We should see the roadway section. We need to see, it's very difficult for us to understand what's going on in the plan when I'm looking at this.
Okay.
So I think it needs to be explained a lot better.
Okay, we'll show that. That house just recently finished, so we'll show it. And I did have one more question. The NRI was approved and was still valid because the preliminary plan's valid, and do we need to do a new one? I guess that's a question for Amy.
As well, because you have an approved forest conservation plan, that is now the regulating document. So you would be, there are a couple of directions you could go. If you choose to abandon your approved preliminary and site plans, then we're back to the NRI and we would have to look at when that was approved.
Okay.
If you're not abandoning those plans, then you would be looking at amending the approved forest conservation plans.
Okay, so what are our options? Can we amend it rather than abandoning it?
Yes, so that would be, so this would not be a new plan. This would be an amendment of your approved preliminary and site plans, right? In the case of this plan, right, we have since changed the system, but in the case of this plan, it is under the preliminary and site plans. So it follows whatever you do with your preliminary and site plans. In the future, it will be submitted as an F plan so that it's under the new system.
Okay. Any more questions?
Yeah, I'm confused, but I started out confused. So, are we still planning on having the 3 driveways is it still basically from this point, just explaining everything and showing everything, but it's.
No, you have to explain it to us and then we'll evaluate it and we'll make a decision.
Okay, but the goal at this point is to evaluate and give you all the information that you need that you can see, identify, and then, but the game plan is still the 3 driveways?
Definitely not.
Okay, so.
Definitely, we don't want 3 driveways, so.
Okay, so do we have a idea of how many driveways we're gonna have?
They're saying 1.
We're saying 1 at this point.
But I.
But I don't think we
That's what
can
I'm
have just
confused.
1.
And that's fine, but we want to see the information to make that determination.
Because otherwise he's going to lose lots because you can only have 4 on a driveway, so.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm going with this.
But that's not a reason why you should have 2 driveways. Like, you shouldn't tell me that because you have, you can't only have 4 houses on a driveway, that you have to have 2 driveways. Like, that's not a reason for it. You have to show me environmental issues, why the driveways you have to have so many driveways and why they have to be located there.
Okay.
And as you know, this is a concept plan submission. Right. You're soliciting comments from us. Sounds like we have some work to do on, getting this to a place that we would all feel comfortable with moving forward on. So I think you all have some things to work on and further explain. We'd be happy to meet with you and before you get started on your site or preliminary plan submission. So plenty of discussions still to be had and issues to be worked out.
Okay, all right, so we'll have follow-up meetings then.
Hey, Karen, Just real quick, this is Mark Etheridge with Water Resources. Nice to see you. Hadn't seen you in a while. Just as you keep working on the layout here, keep in mind that you're going to have to show full compliance with stormwater management for us to support the concept, right? So
Yes.
keep that in mind as you keep going forward, because otherwise we can't support it.
Right. Our intent was dry wells and then probably some microbios for the driveways, but we.
Yeah, those driveways look a little bit problematic. There's a lot of them, so that's just want to keep that in mind.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, thank you. Anyone else?
Well, I'm just throwing, I don't know if I should say this out loud, but we're abandoning the existing right of way that we go through the other people's property. Is that the goal here? Is that we're abandoning that?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay, because that's an option too, that maybe we could extend off of that to another lot and do the one driveway down there. I mean, I'm just, I really am not professional enough to say these things, but.
No, it's fine. We just want to see the information to understand better what's going on in this area.
That's all I gotta say.
All right, I think that's everything.
Okay.
All right, thank
Can
you.
we set up a meeting now, a time?
Yeah, so,
No, the concept plans don't get set up dates, so.
okay.
But we can set up.
Yeah, you can reach out to me and I'll
Okay.
get with our team.
All right.
But as far as this process, the concept plan ends at DRC, so.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, but I mean, obviously, we want to meet before we go on with preliminary plan.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, because we want
We
to
need
set
to
us.
have to join us too in that,
Okay,
mainly a transportation issue.
okay. All right, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Tina Sorrento. I'm the Chief of the Intake and Regulatory Coordination Division, and this is the DRC meeting for 14915 Mount Nebo Road. Your lead reviewer is Jonathan Casey, and this meeting is being recorded and live streamed. The purpose of this meeting is for you to ask any questions you might have based on the comments you received, and I'll ask Jonathan to kind of highlight any of the major issues we should talk about and then turn it over to the applicant. So go ahead, Jonathan.
Good morning. Jonathan Casey with Uptown Planning. To be honest, there are no big issues with the application that I can see so far. No real showstoppers, regular standard comments. Quickly addressed.
Or just turn over.
Jonathan, I lost part of that there, but yeah, good morning, Dave McKee, Benning Associates. The applicants are here also, Paul and Iona. And I agree with Jonathan. Looks like we're in pretty good shape here. We've actually collected a couple of approvals already. The stormwater management concepts have been approved. Rural Rustic Roads Advisory Committee has weighed in and given us the okay on the plan as presented. So we're working on a few other things. We have some DOT comments that look relatively minor. We'll take care of those. Working with Well and Septic to address some comments we've received from them. So that should come along here shortly. And fire department approval. We'll work on that as well this week. So the only thing I wanted to really discuss, I think, was the one comment, I think, which came from Josh about the area of clearing that we show as possible future clearing on the FCP. So that's kind of always a quandary as to how we plan for possible future things that the owners may not even be thinking about just yet. Properties in the AR zone, we have a lot of uses that are allowed in the AR zone, as you know, that are top priority, small farming type things, things like that. They've also talked about a possible ADU. We haven't really planned for that yet, but they'd like to reserve that option. So that's really the one thing I wanted to talk about.
Well, as you know, Dave, this is Josh. The forest conservation law says you must retain as much forest as possible, and without having a actual plan that says this is going here, we can't just allow forest clearing for a possible future. I understand that it is for possible future activities that you don't want to place the area into Cat 1 easement. However, the law doesn't really accord for that. So we can discuss about that. Maybe we can come up with something like with some language about the easement saying that this area can be released in the future without penalty or something to that effect. But the law doesn't allow for just having area listed as cleared without a reason and a plan.
Okay, so either we come forward with a plan, is what it sounds like, or you're going to be looking for more easement there, right?
Yep.
Okay.
That's what the law requires.
Okay, yeah, I guess what we were hoping was the LOD would protect that area, and we'd come back at some point with an amendment with a plan, But in the meantime, since it's outside the LOD, it couldn't be cleared.
Yeah, unfortunately, to count it as cleared on the worksheet, it makes up for the mathematical formula. So we can't count it as cleared without a reason.
Yeah.
It's also really hard to enforce that LOD from that standpoint. This is Mark Etheridge with Water Resources. LODs can move as far as sediment control requirements are concerned, and sometimes if there's another reason to keep it there that we're not aware of, we've had this happen in the past where an LOD has been extended that caused some heartburn for park and planning. So we want to make sure we have it right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll have to get together and decide how we want to move forward on that. But that was really the only topic, I think. We do have the one matter of the existing shed that really is a neighbor's shed that's been on the property. And from what I understand from the clients, it's actually kind of in ruins. So it's just kind of falling down. So we'll re-identify that on the plan as ruins, I think, and move forward with that. It's not really something that's in active use. That would be a zoning matter, I don't think, but we can check with zoning on that as well. Paul or Iona, do you have anything?
No.
Okay.
No, it sounds good. I mean, yeah, we'll have to come up with something for the area forest clearing. I mean, we don't have any idea to clear the forest at all, but we did want to kind of keep it out of the easement so that we could use it. But I understand if the law doesn't allow for that, then that's what it is.
And the way, even if we're going to make a plan, the idea is that we want to keep as much forest as possible because, we want to have the beauty of the trees and the backyard. I feel that the more trees, I've been speaking with some of my neighbors and, they also like to, have a little bit of buffer and space. That's the reason why we also wanted to make low impact on the whole lot. So we want to put the house closer to the road. So we keep space between, us and neighbors, and we don't plan to cut anymore. We're trying to keep as many trees and to plant more cedars in between to have a buffer zone and privacy and, natural, to increase the natural habitat and to, to have a lot of, birds and kind of like a, what you call those, like a refugee for like a
refuge
for wildlife, because in the back it's all the forest and the hunting, so we want to have a lot of wildlife around. So we're not really planning on clearing, except if we're gonna add another ADU, we definitely want to keep as many trees as possible, especially the cedars and the maples and all that. They're so beautiful. So we just want, the whole, we just want to have maybe little to walk around, but not to have a whole opening. Plus the soil seems pretty, we don't want to impact it more because it seems like it's kind of.
Yeah, we definitely have the idea of low impact. The house is 3 bedrooms and we were thinking the ADU would be 1 bedroom, just, to have a standard square footage of living space, but, spread a little bit to retain the rural character.
And more like a sanctuary for wildlife, white plants. Even the front, we wanted to have it
Yeah, I mean, I think we get the vision. Dave and Josh can work through the details of the forest area of forest clearing.
Okay.
As we move forward.
Sounds good.
Yeah, we'll work on that and come back with a plan that meets their vision. I think that's what we have in mind. Sounds good.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Appreciate it.